Welcome to the Broski Diddles podcast. This is your boy KIKO Kiko Cervantes, and today we got you with that movie review with the crew. Today we got a special one. I'm trying to make it so that every movie that we give an analysis to is a great one. I'm trying to make them good so that you don't waste any time watching these. Not only the movie, but the actual review. And today we got a biographical survival film based on an actual event. It's called 13 Lives, and it's about the rescue that happened on the Tham Luang cave in Thailand. And this was produced by Ron Howard. Ron Howard is a director and producer, and he's been in great movies. So this movie, hopefully most of you already seen it. The best way to watch these movie reviews is to see the movie first and then come watch the podcast. And when there are biopics like this, it's a little hard to talk about the film without talking about the story as well. So even though I'm gonna be reviewing the film based on the cinematic factors of it, I'm also gonna be touching into the subject matter, which was a very touching, story. So there's 13 kids. It's 12 kids really, and then the coach, which seems to be young, like probably 18, but they never called him a kid, so I would guess that he's over 18. They go to this cave after playing football, and they were gonna have a birthday party that night, and they were like, look, before we go to the birthday party, let's go to the cave. And I had heard of this story in the past. I'm pretty sure, this was like a world news. There were some boys that were stuck in a cave, and my whole thing was like, okay, what's the big deal? Like, it's a cave. Like, you just go in, you just get them out, and that's it. Like, it's a little cave you go in, and for years I never really looked into the story. And if you haven't, it's even better, right? Because then the movie is all a surprise to you. I kind of suspected that 13 people lived because it's called 13 Lives. But as the movie starts progressing, you really doubt it. You're like, man, how the fuck are they gonna get these kids out? And the movie is actually, for the amount of things that happen, it's not long. It's like 2 hours and 20 minutes. It has Colin Farrell in it, among other actors, but he's one of the best known. And it seems that they film on the location, which obviously makes the whole thing, a lot more real. And man, the story is crazy, right? So they go into the cave, and it's as soon as they go into the cave, it starts raining. And this monsoon, which is like non-stop rain that would normally happen around the 19th of July, started happening on June 23rd, which was, I think, the day that they went in. So it was like 3 weeks early. And you can see in the movie that at the time it was the World Cup in 2018, right? No, this was in, wait up, let me just double check when this happened. All right, so this happened in 2018. Yeah, okay, so 4 years ago. This was actually very recent, and it was during the World Cup. So one of the cool things about it is they really made you feel like you were there, because you will hear in the background people watching the World Cup, and they made efforts into taking you to that time and making sure the details were correct. And just the whole filming. Ron Howard. Let me put some movies Ron Howard has made, because this guy is A Beautiful Mind, The Da Vinci Code, Apollo 13, Rush, Cocoon, In the Heart of the Sea, Splash, and this guy is a G. So this movie was produced by somebody that knows what the fuck they're doing, and it was really well portrayed. And a lot of the movie has to be filmed underwater, which is a whole different thing. For movie making, something is to have the ability to control everything that the exposure in the camera, the lighting, everything. But when you're underwater, it all changes. And to me, it's crazy how they even achieved the stakes, because I don't know if they actually had to be inside the caves or if they created a like a little set where they would make the caves, but it looked really real, like they were there. And you don't realize how difficult it is to dive until you see a movie like this. There's also a documentary on Netflix that I may or may not watch because I already, I saw the movie, and the movie depicts the story pretty well. So it's like, watching. It's not a documentary; it's a docu-series. So it's like 10 episodes, but maybe it goes into detail into the more specific things of the whole rescue mission, which was like a directed effort from many people around the world and in the community. And it was actually very beautiful to see how people can really come together for a cause, even if the cause was like these 13 kids went to do something. I don't know, part of me thinks they went into this cave, like, isn't that dangerous? Like, it's the type of shit my mom would be like, this motherfucking kid again doing his little fucking adventures. I don't know, I just, part of me, I'm not a dad yet, but part of me already thinks like a dad, and I'm just like, these fucking kiddos again causing ruckus, But of course, they're sweet kids. Plus, the Thai people. I've known this from other things that I've seen, but you can see it in this movie. There's just such gentle and good people, but also strong and warriors as well. One thing that's interesting in the movie is that it also depicts, I guess, corruption and disorganization in governments where things don't work, perfectly fine, like a first world country. In first world countries, things are fucked and there's corruption and there's shenanigans. So imagine in countries like Thailand. I come from Venezuela, and I related it a lot to, what I saw in the movie in Thailand with, there's the governor, but then there's also the Ministry of Interior, and they want to also take care of their interests, so they look good, so they try to use a scapegoat in case shit goes wrong. This is your fault. So you also have, aside from the whole technical difficulty of actually getting to the kids, finding them, getting them out, you also have the political blanket over it where you have to also move like chess pieces. So that was interesting as well. But going back to the diving, you don't realize how crazy diving is, especially cave diving, until you see this. I had heard, like in Joe Rogan, there was this guy, an MMA fighter, Cowboy Cerrone, who tells a story that's very scary about how he almost died cave diving, and he's like a professional and all this shit. And when he tells a story, because I don't have the visuals of it, I'm thinking, I believe him that this was a scary thing and he almost died in. But I'm still like, I don't get what's the hard part. I'm trying to visualize why would it be hard, right? Because he's describing the cave and he can't see, and the line gets broken. But I'm just thinking, okay, but how is this visually depicted, right? Because I don't know exactly what he's talking about. And in this movie, you actually see what it is to cave dive and to go through these little crevasses in water and to have currents move and to be in a world where you're almost like in space, where everything looks the same. You might not know where you're going. You get this, you lose your orientation. And when you see the movie, you get so tense and scared because you're like, oh my God, now I understand what this guy was talking about. This is fucking terrifying. This is like being in space. This is like being an astronaut that got out of the ship and you're in space, just crawling on your own. And you have an amount of air that if it runs out, you're fucked. And if you panic, you start breathing more, so you drain your air faster. It's so many factors, the technical equipment that could fail, and that fucks you up, and you're like really deep into this cave. And that's the other thing, right? I'm thinking, okay, these guys are in a cave. Just make a little hole, get the kids out. Come on. It's 2018. We've gone to the fucking moon. We have Elon Musk and the guy from Virgin doing private flights to space. We can't get these boys from a cave. Make a little, get a little shovel. Start shoveling. Come on, get a bunch of fucking, make put a bunch of food trucks that you give out food to the locals, and they just, shovel, and then they're out. But I'm fucking stupid. I'm not thinking, when you see this cave and how huge it is, I mean, these kids went fucking far. I mean, again, I was gonna say it's not their fault. It is their fucking fault. I mean, this was all their fault. But I'm saying that doesn't mean that they shouldn't be rescued. I mean, they're still innocent kids that were just trying to have fun. But it is their fault. I mean, like when I did stupid shit and I was a little kid, it's still my fault, even if I'm an innocent kid that didn't mean any wrong. But they go into this cave. And not only did they go into, let's go to the cave. No, they went far into the fucking cave. Like, this is like when people were trying to get to them, they were taking like hours and hours. And I'm just like, how long these kids walked inside this cave for? I mean, this shit was so far in, bro. They were getting to the fucking center of the earth. At least that's how it looked. Again, maybe they got into the cave when it was dry. No water in it. So maybe, of course, when you're walking, you can do walking a lot faster than if you're diving through little. But, in any case, I'm thinking, okay, so what's the difficult part here? You're going through water. You're just floating. Just fucking dive and get them, right? But you have rocks everywhere that are sharp, like fucking razor blade. You have tides, because it's still raining and water gets into different cracks of the mountain. And this creates tides that pull you into the rocks so you can hit your head and all this shit. Then you have the possibility of you losing the line. So what does that mean? There's ropes that are tied along the route so that you could see where you're going and also grab to it if you need to pull yourself depending on the current. And also, because there's sediment and like sand and shit at the bottom of the floor, that all gets picked up with tides and it makes it hard to see. Sometimes you cannot even see your hands because of how thick the smog is in there. So you're literally in fucking space alone. Then you have air that you're seeing how much, if it's running out. It's just such a scary situation, and the movie does so good at making you feel tense throughout the whole fucking thing. Man, I was, in the past few weeks we've been doing a lot of these scary movies. Like on October we did a lot of scary movies for Halloween. And those are movies that get you tense because it's all these scare tactics and they're gonna, scare you with the killer or the demon. Here, you're scared and tense because this is like a real life situation where you're like, oh my God, I can't. Dude, I know this might be a little overreach, but not maybe. The way that they rescued this kid is almost like when they went to the moon in 1969. It's like, bro, it was such a fucking crazy odyssey to do this. And the fact that it's almost like when you watch Apollo 13 and, that whole thing about them, having that problem in space and then rendezvousing around the moon to come back. If you haven't seen Apollo 13, I mean, come on. I gotta do a review on that movie. I mean, that fucking movie is amazing. Ron Howard directed Apollo 13 as well with Tom Hanks as the lead. And that movie's pretty accurate. I mean, I've seen the documentaries as well with the actual people talking about it. That movie's accurate. But this rescue was that insane. And for so long, I saw this movie on Amazon Prime. I don't know where it is available in other countries, but in Spain it's on Amazon Prime. And I had it on my list, and I was just like, yeah, whatever. Yeah, they go into a little mine, and then they I was just like, this is boring. Man, this is one of the most compelling movies I've seen in a while. Wow. And I love doing these reviews right fresh off when I just saw the movie. I saw it recently, a few hours ago. Because I just have that aura still in me. I have the vibes. I have the fucking... I can almost speak Thai. I want a Thai pad Thai, I want to go and Thai pad Thai. Like, I want to go to Thailand if it wasn't that over there they don't like people that do the whiskey Rooney. I'm like, whoa, what? They don't like the whiskey Rooney? I don't know if I heard somewhere that it's becoming legal in Thailand, but I've also heard that they will cut your head if you spit in the floor or chew gum. Maybe it's in Singapore. Maybe I'm talking shit. But anyways, they look like really nice people, but I do hear that the government can be corrupt. So, Or maybe they're not. If they sponsor the show, maybe they're not. So they find the kids, right? Which is a fucking ordeal on its own. They need to go to these caves that have never really been dived. Because these caves are normally for people to go to when they're dry, which is most of the year. But there is one time in the year where it gets filled up with water. So they find the kids. And when they find the kids, it's such an insane feat to even just find the kids that they just celebrate. Like the whole country's in celebration, the whole world. And then you think, all right, but so they'll get them out. And then as you keep thinking, you start realizing, oh no, this is gonna be a lot more complicated than we thought. Because the divers that get to the kids are professional divers, and the whole ordeal takes like 6 hours to get to them. So this is not like a kid can just learn how to dive and do the diving on its own. He's most likely gonna die. He's gonna panic. Something's gonna happen because it's a hard, difficult dive. And these are like little kids. Some of them don't even know how to swim. So imagine if you don't even know how to swim, you're gonna freak the fuck out. Actually, unfortunately, one guy, eventually it's two people that die because one of them dies from blood infection, which I believe might be having too much CO in your CO2, maybe in your blood. So it causes a blood infection. But originally, one guy actually dies while diving, and he's a quote unquote professional diver from the Marine. It's also important to disclaim that the Marine or the Navy doesn't have like actual training in cave diving. They do open sea diving, but it's a lot different when you go into a cave. There's a lot of other factors and other dangerous situations that you can run into. So now you start thinking, oh, okay. But if this water is staying here, because the water is not going to leave anytime soon, this whole cave is filled up, and the kids were able to get to a little place where it's a little higher so the water doesn't get to them. But they're trapped in there. There's no way to get through the top, through the mountain, and drill a hole. And there's no way. So okay, what's the other thing that could happen? Well, what if the kids wait until the water eventually leaves the cave? That would be maybe 4 months. It was not possible to continuously bring food to them. And most importantly, the air pocket that they were in only had enough oxygen, right? Like if you put a bug inside a closed, container and you close it, eventually he's gonna breathe all the oxygen that's available in that air, and then that person, that animal will die. So it's the same thing here. It's not so much that you could bring air, but it's not possible because it's too difficult of a dive to every day bring food, water. So they cannot be there for a long time. So we need to take them out. When they discovered them, they're already there for 10 days, which already they thought they were just gonna find dead bodies, and they find the 13 kids alive, which is like insane. And they're like, oh, thank you, you're very strong, yeah. And they had a coach who it's like meditating with them and praying and doing these yoga positions, which keeps them like with high spirits. And it's insane that they actually lived, that they were alive in a dark situation. So they start thinking, okay, how the fuck can we get these kids out? And they just can't find a way. And this is when the movie, you think it's already exciting and crazy, and then it just ups a notch where they're like, what if we sedate the kids and then we put these masks over them, not the ones that you put in the mouth not the breathers that are just for the mouth, but masks that go and cover your whole mouth, your whole face, so that you breathe normally without having something in your mouth. And then you drag the kids out like if they were a package, unconscious, because if they're unconscious, then they're just like an unmoving mass that you can just move. But if they're alive and they see what's happening, they're gonna freak out and they're gonna panic and they're gonna die, drown, or dude. And you're like, nah, this is insane. Like you cannot sedate these kids. And like also apparently like you had to give a shot of ketamine every 30 minutes so that the kid continues to stay sleeping. And I mean, it is true that the whole diving thing is divided by by blocks. So there was a part where they would come out of the water, check that everything's cool, and then go back into the tunnels. But I mean, still, I mean, this was like I said, to me, it almost looked as complicated as going to the moon. It was that there was that many things that could go wrong at any moment. And when they thought of this idea of sedating the kids and bringing them through this tunnel, they were like, okay, we're gonna do this as it's the last thing we could do because they're gonna die anyways, and maybe some of them will live. Some of them, that will be enough for to say successful. And I mean, obviously, if you're watching this at this part, it's because you saw the movie and they all make it, which is insane. It's insane. There's one little kid that's so small that a normal mask doesn't work, so they need to get a smaller mask, but even the smaller mask doesn't work. So they kind of adapted so that it almost seals, because it has to seal your face so that no water goes in. And he does it, but not so well, so the guy has to drag the kid, but almost holding the mask. And that was so tense because at any moment, if water goes in, then you're fucked, it's gonna drown. And the whole time you put yourself in the shoes of the divers, thinking, man, if this was me, how scared, how nervous would you be? You have a life that depends on you, but also there's no other way out, so this is the only thing you could do. And I think, of course, this is Ron Howard. This is not like a new filmmaker that doesn't know what the fuck he's doing. This is a G. This is an OG that knows, that's been about it for a minute. He even made that movie Willow, which I think they're making a new one, which is the little kids. Well, not little kids, they're little people. They're willows, they're little willows. And there's a new movie coming out, I think, with one of the original willows, the Willowers. But Ron Howard, what he made you feel in this movie, not only was the closeness of the culture of the Thai people, of how they live it, but also how they help and care for their own. But the tension and the scariness of the actual gravity of the situation, and how scary it is to be in an enclosed environment, and how crazy it is that there's people out there that actually like to do these crazy extreme things. And if there wasn't those guys that for some reason they love to cave dive, they wouldn't have been able to save the kids, because they bring, some British guys that are the ones that sort of have been in cave diving around the world that are good. But not only them, there were many, many cave divers around the world, from the UK, from Australia, that came to help. And that if it wasn't because there's people that like to do these extreme things, nobody like the Navy doesn't know how to cave dive. That's not something they do, because this is an extreme thing. And this was in Thailand. One place that's very common for cave diving is in Mexico. They have a lot of these underground caves that you can go and do things. I'll be honest with you, I would like to dive maybe one day in a controlled environment. I would like to go to those places that have caves and you can go in the little center of it. But actually diving in a cave, I don't know. After seeing this movie, I'm very scared. I'm very scared of it. It seems like there's beautiful things you can see, that when the scenery is amazing, but it just seems like an extreme sport that at first you don't see the danger in it so quick, but then as you start watching this movie, you're like, oh, no, this is all dangerous. Like everything is a fucking odyssey to go through. Watching a few documentaries on YouTube, this movie concentrates on the two British guys and they make them look like heroes, and they were. But there's like a documentary that shows a lot of other divers that weren't really focused on the movie, but that really helped putting the lines and getting very close to where the kids were. The two British guys were the sort of the ones that did the last run and got to them. But it is true that before they got to the kids, there were other divers along with the Navy, that did a lot of the line, which is marking the route. So they did a lot of stuff as well. I mean, it was a group effort, And all the kids make it. Each time they took out a kid with the mask, you're like, this is insane that they even thought of doing this and that it worked, There's the series on Netflix. I'm gonna watch it just to see what's good with it. I'm gonna see if it's not too boring since I already know the story. But I want you guys to tell me what you thought of this movie. It reminded me a lot of that movie called The Impossible, which is actually with Tom Holland, and it's about the tsunami that happened, I think, in Indonesia, and it's a true story too with Nicole Kidman. But this movie reminded me of those like survival stories that are so beautiful and they're miraculous. They really feel like a miracle, and it's insane. Let me know what you thought of this movie, if you really felt that pureness of it, and if you really enjoyed it, and what do you thought of the story in general, like the fact that these kids made it, and the rescue mission of sedating them and putting them in this, like sleeping state so that they could just be not moving and they could just push them out. I thought that was crazy. If I have, because it is the Broski Doodles, we have our review system. It's a score system that's been authorized by many associations around the world, and they consider it one of the standards, but when it comes to movie reviews and movie analysis, synopsis, if you will. And for this movie, I would give it a strong 8. It is true that the true story of it adds a lot of value to it, but a true story has to be told correctly and in a beautiful way and in a pure organic method, and I think that was achieved on this one. So I'm gonna give it an 8. I think it was a solid movie. It made me cry at times. It made me feel good about humanity, and it left me with a happy feeling about the world and the people in it. So let me know what you think. Thank you for tuning in every week. We got every Monday the regular episodes. On Thursday, we got the movie review with the crew. And we're going to keep doing this for you guys. We have the audios on Spotify, on iTunes, on everywhere that you can get your podcast. And of course, the visual part of it on YouTube. If you can, follow me on Instagram as well. Everything is down here in the description. And leave a review, subscribe to it, and show it to your grandma. We're trying to get more people from the third age, as we know that that's our target market. Miami, I know that you're seeing a lot of people from Miami have been commenting and saying good things about the potty, and that's one of our big following is in Miami, in the South Florida region. You could call it north of South America, if you will. Thank you for tuning in. I love you. Belgium's in the house. Peace.